With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoe's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more.
Hey listeners, SJ here, and in the spirit of the Love series, for the next few weeks we're going to be highlighting the Rendezvous Project by sharing audio from a few of the sessions with you. The whole Zoe team put months of time, blood, sweat, and tears into the creation of the Rendezvous Project, and we hope our efforts show through, even in this audio version. The Rendezvous Project is a video resource intended to be used by just you and your spouse in the comfort of your own home, or as a small group study, or maybe even a getaway retreat with other couples. The idea behind the Rendezvous Project is that your marriage would be enriched, would grow, and that you could walk with God together even more effectively and wholeheartedly. For more information about it, email us at exploringmore@zoe.org or visit therendezvousproject.com.
I love what the artist Vincent van Gogh once said. He said that the heart of a man is like the sea. It has its storms, it has its tides, and in its depths, it has its pearls too.
How does a man uniquely bear the image of God? What desires and longings has God set deep in his heart, and what does it look like for a man to come fully alive?
We want to welcome you to this session on the heart of a man. Join Michael as he guides us through the unique way that men bear the image of God and the desires that God has placed in men to love, encourage, protect, and provide.
And understanding how God created us for intimacy, oneness, connectedness with Him and with each other.
Yeah.
And how critically important that is to see how marriage is so opposed. And then how powerful it is to see the heart of a man and the heart of a woman walking with God together.
Yeah.
Paul talks about in Romans there was a first Adam, and Jesus being the second Adam. And men and women, we are created in the image of God, and He wants His image bearers back. I will never forget one of the earlier years we did these assignments. There was a couple who'd been married almost 50 years. And they were why are you here? We asked the question, why are you here? And Joe says, well, we're just kind of here for a tune-up, maybe here to share some of the things we've learned. I mean, we've been married almost 50 years. What are we going to learn? And I remember in my heart going, I can't wait to talk to this guy on Sunday. And on Sunday, we asked the same question. Why were you here? Why were you here? And Joe, with tears, said, I learned some things about my wife that I didn't know. I didn't know her story. I've lived with this woman for that long and didn't know her story. Precious. Our design. Robin covered it in Genesis 3. God spoke, let us make human beings in our image, make them reflecting our nature, so they can become responsible, so they can be responsible for the fish and the sea and the birds in the air. God created human beings. He created them, this is the Message version, God-like, small g, reflecting God's nature. Do you have to be a believer to be an image bearer? No. That's really important. There's a quality about every human being. And He wants His image bearers back. We've been ransomed, right? Paid for. He gave His life so that we could have one, and that we could have it as His sons and daughters. In this image that we bear, we share, like Robin said, so much in common, but then there's this gender thing. And we don't have time to go into all the cultural relevance and significance and challenges right now with gender. But when we go back to the beginning, he created them, man and woman, he created them. So we have a human being likeness together, but we're unique. We're different. We're made differently. Complementary parts, right? What did Robin say? That and the Andretians, when they shared back to back, to the Ezer to lean, right? And who can forget the great line in Jerry Maguire, right? You complete me. One of the things I want to talk about for a few minutes that Robin started, and I want to continue, is we need to talk about this image that we bear. How do you see him? Because if, like last night, this is a story of restoration, then the question is, what are we being restored into? What's it look like? And then that begs the question, do you want to be that? And then that invites us to look at the inventory of how do we see him? What's the image of God that we carry within us? Perception, attitudes, beliefs. And remember what I said, what are the odds that you've interpreted your life accurately? Not all. What are the chances that we have maybe gotten God wrong in some of our stories? Now, I'm not talking about your theology. I'm sure that that's all tight and nice. But most of us diminish or are naive to the idea that you carry within you a personal theology. All your story and the things that have happened to you have led you to make conclusions and attitudes and perspectives and beliefs. And that's why we say that it only takes a few lies in place to keep you away from who you might really be. I mean, we come into this story with a pretty clear whiteboard, and people then start drawing on it and writing on it, and it ends up to looking like a graffiti piece. People telling you who and what you are or aren't. And how do you process all that? Oh, we're deeper water than most of us have realized. This autopilot thing that we have, that's what I'm talking about. That's your personal theology. What has built your belief system about who you are and how the world works? And that's where biblical theology often cannot overthrow what we're holding on to or is holding on to us so desperately. That's why you're supposed to know the truth, and the truth sets you free. But do you see most believers living free? No. So I'm describing the problem that most of us are on journey to solve, to becoming who we truly are. So our image of God is really, really important. So I want to talk about that just a little bit, because if we have him wrong, we can never get right. If we have him wrong, we can't get right. And so what is our image of him? And I want to show you a picture of me growing up, the vantage point or the idea that I had of what Jesus was like. So there he is. I love Fred Rogers. I'm not here to diminish him in any way, but I can tell you Fred Rogers was not a poster on my wall as a boy. I had other posters, right? Heroes and sports guys and all-stars. And when it came to doing biographies in school, right? Walt Disney, Abraham Lincoln, right? Where's that? Jefferson, right? All these heroes of our story. And Jesus wasn't on the wall. But I watched him pretty regularly. He was the nicest guy, right? But I didn't want to become like him. Do you see the problem? If your view of Jesus is less than, or now when I got a little older, this film came out. I wanted to be like that guy, like Diana, as that inspires women, right? We want to be like that. That's the question for image bearers. Do you want to be like him? Because if he is working you to become like Jesus and you don't like him or don't want, do you see the conflict? Do you see the challenge of that? How do you see Jesus? And it's one of my greatest confessions now of my misunderstanding of who he was and what he was like. I had him not as a warrior, but more as a pacifist. I just had no idea the courage and the strength it took for him to go to war for me through a cross that I might live. That's a different story than I heard growing up, or that I believed growing up. I'm not going to punish the church or the pastors who told me the story, but my interpretive abilities at that time was over and over again, Sunday after Sunday, something is wrong with you. You are the problem. And this led me to a crisis in some ways of getting close and near someone that I didn't trust, or someone that I didn't think really liked me but had to because the Bible says so. Do you see the dilemma? So this may be a place of inventory for all of us again. How do you see him? I saw God as the Father who is far, far away, and that was okay because he's mostly disappointed in me. And if he was going to say something, it wasn't going to be fun. I had God wrong. And the enemy was making sure that I did. And so part of becoming a man after God's own heart was doing some work in my story about who God is and what he's like. And so I would encourage you may need to take some inventory. If any of those things are true for you, he's far away. If you believe that in your personal theology, if you've believed that, you can sing all about God being near, but you need to unsubscribe from God being far. And tell him, I'm sorry I believe this. I didn't know I did. It's impossible to be in love with someone that you don't trust. And so what if we could get everything out of the way that's in the way of trusting him and our image of him? That would be a good thing. And bring nearness and closeness. Because what were we made for? Intimacy. Knowing and being known. So do you see these back doors that the enemy can work sometimes? And some of our stories have told us those things, honestly. Somebody who was supposed to love us unconditionally didn't. Somebody who was supposed to protect us and take care of us couldn't. And they have left marks in our stories and in our personal theologies. But that's not the end of your story. Every great story that we love is a comeback story. And you and I are on a comeback story. It's been one of my greatest joys the last almost 20 years to get to know him for who he really is. And for him then to tell me who I really am as a man. What I bring to the story. What kind of Superman am I? I love what Dorothy Sayers said. She's a early 1900s English author and poet. The people who hanged Christ never, to do them justice, accused him of being a bore. On the contrary, they thought him too dynamic to be safe. It has been left for later generations. Here's her accusation now, right? First century, they didn't think he was a bore. It has been left for later generations to muffle up that shattering personality and surround him with an atmosphere of tedium. We have very efficiently pared the claws of the Lion of Judah, certified him meek and mild, and recommended him as a fitting household pet for pale curates and pious old ladies and men. How do we see him? Men, if we're going to get our masculine hearts back, we have to see what a true masculine heart looks like and the image that we bear. As boys, we came into this story just like little girls, asking the same questions of belovedness. Do you see me? And do you love what you see? And then it gets a little bit gender aligned. A little older, it gets a little gender different. And and these are some general statements, but my little girls, they wanted me to feel their muscle too, but mostly I had to sit and watch plays. I had to do dress up, and it was around a party, right? When I was a boy dressing up, it was around conquering, it was around missions, it was around jumping off things, it was around emergency room visits, it was, right? So gender starts to not divide us, but begins to specialize us in our unique image-bearing ways. Masculine image bearers also bear an image through strength. And our question becomes a little different. Can I come through? Can I deliver? Can I provide? And can I protect? I used to wonder why I would get so upset when my girls would get hurt as a father. And Jesus began to show me that it's that protection. I'm not mad at them. Guess what they interpreted? That I was mad at them. I was mad that they got hurt on my watch. I was upset that they got hurt at all. And I know women carry that as well, but as a man, it can often look like anger. And there be a weightiness and a fierceness to that. Maybe not learning how to wield that, but over time, as a father, learning how to enter into, with a masculine heart, how to protect, how to provide. Men, what films do you love? What is the epic nature of that pulls us? It's amazing. My friends, SJ and Jeff and Patrick, it's amazing how many more lines we know from movies than we know from scriptures. And we're professionals, right? I ought to know all of Romans 7, but I know all of William Wallace's speech. What is that? It's story. And one of the things the enemy's done that we need to get back is the story of the Gospels. Yes, the truth, but the story, the narrative, the weightiness of that. So these characters that we love, those are images we want to become. They are actually borrowing their weightiness and their power from the great character in the story, our God. And all the things that we love about them are all the things I promise you that are true about him, and our hearts know it. The challenge was our theology got arrested. Our stories told us something else. And the enemy that lurks at every opportunity to deface or devalue or bring into question the heart of God, as he did in the garden. He's still running the same plays. You can't trust the heart of God. He's holding out on you. You can write a better part than you have. You can be like him. John Eldridge put it this way about our desires and how they give us away. In Wild at Heart, every man longs for a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. A battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. And John's proposition was, do you know why every man longs for that? Because that is also the heart of God. God is in a battle to fight for his creation. Oh, we have a designer that has designed such an incredible landscape. Wild at heart. I believe there's many desires that men possess, but I want to just review these real quick. 4 things. Men desire intimacy, being loved, right? We start our story like that as boys. We want to be loved. We have the desire to provide. I believe we have a core desire as men to be close to beauty. We'll talk about that some more in a minute. And also I think we have a desire to protect. That our strength is to protect others, not use it against others. So if we're ever going to get our hearts back, we must get the hero role back. Understand that that's part of what we were made for. To be deployed into the story to fight for the hearts of others from a whole heart. One of the beautiful things about the masculine heart's desires is they actually complement the feminine heart. That's what God intended, two walking with him together. That two, what was the quote? 1 + 1 = everything. That we're more when we're together. And you'll see that as we move through the weekend. Passion verbs and other things that we want to introduce you to. What does it look like walking with God together? Man, we've been trained by the world and the system, right? Part of this fallenness has trained us to be human doers rather than human beings. And to draw our worth and significance from our Father, we've traded that in and gone to the world for our value and worth and significance. If that alone could be reversed and the cart could get back behind the horse, we would be on our way, I believe, to becoming the masculine hearts, the men that we were created to be. What C.S. Lewis taught me was that desire's gone wrong. That's what sin is. Desire's gone wrong. Desire's hijacked. And that badness, he says, C.S. Lewis says, badness is good spoiled. So when we think about being close to beauty, men, the enemy's done a huge number here on our hearts and with the world's cooperation. But we love to observe beauty. We love to get close to beauty. It's part of our desires to protect it. So how's the enemy worked against all of our desires, but particularly this one? And all the men's ministries and all the men's issues and men's initiatives that I get to do, whenever I ask this question, and I'll bring it up for the ladies' benefit, there's never been a man who was looking for pornography the day that it found him in his story. And yet it's probably the most significantly distorted, spoiled goodness that the enemy has accomplished in their ways to trick and lure and bind men than anything else. So it shows you how important the desire is and how significantly we were made, because it's been that corrupted. And we want you to, through this weekend, to begin thinking more and more like that. Some of these interesting dichotomies and the befores and afters and the goodness spoiled. It will help you as an oriented man and woman on your journey. What is the enemy doing to my husband? What is the enemy doing to my wife? What is the enemy doing? Because if he's doing it to them, he's doing it to us. Us. I can remember as my girls got older, I knew there would be a day when boys wouldn't be yucky. Oh, those were the days, right? And so I remember telling my girls when they were little, now when the boys come around, they're going to have to talk to Dad. And they'd go, ooh, boys. I'm like, yeah, it's good. Sooner than later, though, right? It starts young. The boys, middle school, junior high, start coming around. But I said that enough to them that they believe me. And so when the first boys started snooping around, I got in there and said, well, he's going to have to talk to me. Oh, yeah, okay. So, they connected me with this 6th grade boy. And this was I call them the Panera Bread meetings. And so I took this first boy to Panera Bread to talk to him about how I expected him to take care of my girl. And, oh man, he was sweating. And I was happy. Because I'm one of his kind. Right? And so I know him kind of, and we're getting some pleasantries crossed. And so then I dive in. I go deep and say, okay, so let me ask you a question. And most men don't know the answer to this question, okay? But I ask him this question. So what do you think girls are for? And he looked just like this. He said, well, to make me happy and to be with me and go places with me and to make me happy. And I said, there's medicine for stuff like that. Wrong answer, right? So I had probably 5 or 6 more of these Panera Bread gatherings, and then my girls caught on and they quit having these boys be embarrassed, but there was one I remember who wouldn't meet with me. And my middle daughter realized pretty quickly, if you're not going to meet with my dad, then you can't be with me. The other questions at the Panera Bread with these boys were, has your dad ever talked to you about what girls are for? Has he ever talked to you about sex? 0 for 6. The other question that would come up was, well, how are you doing? Because they have these phones, right? How are you doing with pornography? Heads down. All 6. I bring that up because it's part of our stories. And I also bring that up because greater is he who's in us than he who's in the world. And if we're on a comeback, if we're overcoming, this is an area that has touched all of our marriages. It's touched all of our lives, and it's a desire that's been spoiled, and we want to go reclaim it. We want to go see it made right and good and holy again. And Jesus, if you know anything about Romans 8, you know that it's basically this. He became like us, men, sinful men, so that we could become like him. Glorious. And so somewhere in the middle, we can get stuck on our comeback. Somewhere in the middle, we start too far downstream with the sin and the action and the activity rather than upstream to the beliefs. Because you know what? Somewhere along the line, men, and I'm telling the wives this, we were sold the idea that what girls were for was for our gratification and for our worth. And until we really start to unsubscribe from that and untangle from that, that's why the behavior goes south. When we get up here and we realize, no, what girls are for is to bring my whole heart, my strength, the weightiness of who I am and who's told me who I am to her for her provision and her protection. What does it look like when we come together and we begin to be complementary parts rather than the accounting, the demanding, the neediness? That's why the greatest thing you can do for your spouse, and maybe this weekend will set you on that trajectory or advance you on that trajectory, the greatest thing you can do for your spouse is get your heart back. Recover from what's happened to you. See things redeemed and restored. Because I know some of your stories and what happened to you, you didn't misinterpret. It wasn't good. You interpreted it accurately. It wasn't good. And we stand on the promise that if it isn't good, then God's not done. Not everything that's happened to you, men, is God's will. Sin is not God's will. So everything that happened to you, he's going to make a way for it to be redeemed and restored, because that's what he does. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Christ was an oriented man. That's the passage we bring out in Valentine's Day. That's the passage we often bring out in Father's Day or even Mother's Day. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Jesus knew who he was and where he was and the good that God's up to in his life. And so as men, as we come back and make our comebacks, we become that man who can do that. And then one of the poorer translated verses is later in Ephesians, wives, submit. Here's what the Message version says. I love this version. Wives, understand and support your husbands in ways that show your support for Christ. That's different than submit. That's a better translation. Understand and support your husband in ways that show your support for Christ. The husband provides leadership to his wife the way Christ does to his church, not by domineering, but by cherishing her. This gives us some insight into what the image of Jesus is like, and therefore the image that we can become as men. If we're going to recover our hearts, we're going to need to recover the image that we bear. We're going to need to recover the desires that we have. And we're going to need to recover the destiny that's ours. The promise, the hope of what's coming and how he's going to walk us there.
I hope you've enjoyed this sneak peek into the Rendezvous Project. For more information, visit therendezvousproject.com. Or if you've already started using the Rendezvous Project and want to share your stories with us, shoot us an email at exploringmore@zoe.org. As always, thanks for listening and keep exploring.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoe.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoe on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoe on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.